Who here is excited about nuclear at COP29? All right, this is awesome. Welcome everyone to our first nuclear panel, Enabling the Future, Financing Small Modular Reactors for the Energy Transition. This event is hosted by the Clean Air Task Force, the EFI Foundation, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the Nuclear Threat Initiative, and we're super honored to be here in the UN SDG Pavilion. Thank you so much for hosting us here. My name is Liebeck. I'm the Senior Director for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa at the Clean Air Task Force, and I'm going to be your host today. So, nuclear at COP. It's just really exciting. I think over the past year, we've moved really from we need nuclear, the what, to how are we actually going to realize nuclear. At COP28, we had over 2 dozen countries pledged to triple nuclear capacity by 2050. In Brussels, we convened 30 heads of state level countries and more at the first ever nuclear energy summit. We had the roadmaps to the nuclear conference in September, hosted by the OECD NEA. And then at Climate Week, which many actually dubbed the Nuclear Climate Week, we had 14 banks expressing their support for tripling financing in line with the nuclear pledge. So successful reactors are actually going ahead in certain parts of the world: China, Russia, the UAE, South Korea. And they've shown it can be done. It can be done on time, on budget, and it can be done through persistence and innovative business models and a willingness to invest in multiple of the same reactor design. So today, we're actually going to hear from leaders in this space. We're going to have 3 keynote addresses, starting with Professor Francesco Cuvaro, the Special Envoy from Italy for Climate, talking about Italy's renaissance in nuclear, as well as Sama Bilbao Leon, who's the Director General at the World Nuclear Association, and then Huang Wei, who's the Director of the Division of Planning, Information, and Knowledge Management in the Department of Nuclear Energy at the IAEA. And then we'll top it off with a fireside chat with the EFI Foundation and NTI. So with this, I'm just going to open this conversation. Francesco, you're up first.
Good afternoon to everyone. It's a real pleasure for me to be here with you. It's a bit strange to speak and I am not able to hear my voice, but okay, it's the first time in this new COP. So thinking about this speech, I had several possibilities, but first of all, I want to recall what we decided last year in COP28. In the section of mitigation of the outcomes of COP28, you can read several solutions that COP suggested for which reason? To keep alive the target of 1.5 Celsius degree. And in the list, obviously, at the first level we have renewable energy, but immediately nuclear energy. It's the first time probably for a COP to mention this. And this is important. It is the same reason why in Italy we are working hard in this direction. We know very well that in the next future, thinking about the data center, the artificial intelligence, we will need a huge amount of energy, electricity, 24 hours for the entire year. You probably know that Microsoft is thinking to reopen the nuclear plant in Pennsylvania because nuclear energy is perfect to fit this kind of demand. And inside the main documents of these companies like Google, like Microsoft, like Apple, is written that they want to be green. And the only possibility that we have right now, in this moment, is nuclear. And not fusion, but fission, small modular reactor. Last week in Italy, we hosted the first international conference on fusion, because it's something that is in front of us. And we are looking for this to bring, as you know, the power of the stairs in our city. But it is time to move really fast now. For this reason, my Minister Pichetto, but also Minister Tajani, insisted a lot on the possibility to involve the small modular reactor inside the landscape of Italian energy. For a precise reason, because with this modular reactor we will have the possibility to give energy to very small facilities, very small industries. Also like a sort of community, if you want. I know that it's not easy. In Italy we have a lot of discussion. We had in the past 2 referendums against this decision, but I believe that we are in a new era. I am a university professor, as you know, and normally I stayed among my students. And in the last 15 years, I started to feel a different feelings in this direction, in the direction of the nuclear. Because, the target of Paris Agreement are very high, is very important, but it's very difficult to achieve. And we have no more time. So what Italy is saying is this: we need to use what we have, everything that we have. We have the biofuel, we have hydrogen, we have carbon capture, we have renewables. We put a specific topic inside the G7 about the storage, but on the other side, we mentioned inside the G7 fission with the small modular reactors and advanced modular reactor and fusion, because this government has a pragmatical approach. You know that the last week we had the election in the US, and a lot of people is very worried about this. I believe that it's possible in any case to keep a bridge, to open the door starting from the technology that we have. And one of the most powerful technology that we have is the small modular reactor. But to do this, in Italy in particular, we need to reopen the supply chain in this. First of all, in the university. We need to create new capacity in the younger people. And on the other side, we need to push harder in the research. Because the only way that we have to fight against climate change is to reduce the CO2 emission, but at the same time to maintain the same development level that we have. This is the dream that in some way we have, but it's not a dream because the technology is almost here. We have a lot of experience, good experiences around the world. Sometimes some of my colleagues said to me, oh look, this startup failed in a small modular reactor. But guys, it's the same thing that happened in the past with photovoltaic. The new technology is based on failures and something that can win. But it's not the failures that can oblige us to say, no, this is not the good technology. Because we know that it's possible, that is safe, and it is really the only possibility that we have right now. I want to close with this picture, if you want. I went to Mauritania 2 months ago, and as you can imagine, it's not like Italy, Germany. There are a lot of poor peoples. But I remain really surprised to see that the smartphone was everywhere, inside, on the hand of everyone. They completely cancelled the part of the wire with the normal phone, and now they are looking for a huge amount of energy. They are looking for energy, and they are using these new technologies, even if sometimes it's a sort of paradox, because immediately the first thing is you need something else. But the reality is this one, that they have the smartphones and they want to use these new technologies. And how can we bring all this amount of energy in a world that requests every day million and million of terawatt hours of new electricity? Obviously, renewable energy is one of the opportunity, but for the base load, we need this technology. We need the small modular reactor, the nuclear, fission, and in the future, why not fusion? So thanks. I hope that I was in the time. It's a really great pleasure for me to be here, and Italy is strongly involved in this kind of discussions. Thank you very much.
Please go ahead. Hello, everyone. This is really very weird, but well, so thank you, Lee, and thank you all the organizers for inviting me to join you here today. So I think it is a great thing to kick things off this COP29 here at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Pavilion. And I think it's really fitting because, as you know, nuclear energy and nuclear science and technology has an enormous role to play to each and every one of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So I think that this is a very good way to frame things out. And also, if you want to learn more about why nuclear fits with the goals, come to the Net Zero Nuclear Pavilion, which is somewhere over there, a few steps over there, and we'll tell you in full detail why and how. So now, I am Sama Bilbao León, Director General of World Nuclear Association, and I'm thrilled to be here. This is probably the 20th or so climate change conference that the association has attended. Maybe not mine, but I've been to many, but not 20. So for more than 20 years, the association has been proud to represent the point of view of the global nuclear industry at these conferences. And of course, you know that last year at COP28 in Dubai, we launched the Net Zero Nuclear Initiative as an opportunity to capitalize on this growing momentum that we've heard from Lee and from Francesco, and actually bring together governments, industry, and civil society into this ambition to triple global nuclear capacity by 2050. And as we heard before, clearly last year we had 25 countries committing to this goal. We met later on in Brussels earlier this year, and we had 35 plus heads of state and many other countries committing to this enormous development. Just a couple of months ago, we had 14 financial institutions also bringing this commitment to 3 times nuclear capacity. So clearly, we have a lot of support, and I think that we can see that there is this growing recognition that the most cost-effective, timely, and very important, equitable manners to reach the 1.5 degrees goal has to include some nuclear capacity, probably a lot of nuclear capacity. So it is very fitting that we are here in this COP, which is supposed to be the finance COP, to talk about how to finance nuclear energy. So clearly, tripling the nuclear output will require the commitment, the ingenuity, and the collaboration between the policymakers, the finance community, the nuclear industry for sure, and many others. So we really need to bring together this coalition of the ambitious to actually deliver on these goals. So I'm going to give you very briefly an idea of what the current landscape is. We publish every year the World Nuclear Performance Report that summarizes where nuclear is every year. So this was at the end of August. And it reported how the nuclear industry today continues to perform very, very effectively as we have done for the last 50 years. I mean, the performance, the capacity factors only continue to grow. And what I think is very important is we really are wanting to make the most of the current fleet of nuclear reactors. So we are seeing how in most countries in the world, we are going to see the license extension of the existing plants. They are going to probably operate for 60, for 80, perhaps 100 years. We are seeing also power upgrades everywhere, essentially getting more energy about existing assets. And also, very importantly, we are restarting some of the plants that were prematurely closed. Some of them, as we just heard, 3 Mile Island, specifically for AI and data centers, but others like Palisades for general use. So all those things are very important, but that's simply not going to be enough. We really need to have much more nuclear if we really are serious about meeting the global needs. So yes, today we have about 64 reactors that are being built in 15 countries. That's great. We have 20 more newcomer countries that are actually putting very seriously all the ducks in a row to actually start very quickly with the nuclear power programs. But that's still not enough. We really need 40 gigawatts of new nuclear capacity every year for the next 25 years. And just so you have an idea, today we are delivering maybe 10 gigawatts in a good year. That's in a good year, not every year. So clearly we have much work to do. So to do that, it's going to really require for us to de-risk financing new nuclear projects. So we, and as you will hear in a second, many others are working on that. We are working with policymakers, with financiers, with energy regulators, and obviously with the nuclear industry to put in place innovative frameworks and ideas that are going to help us optimize how we finance these projects in a manner that also maximizes the social value of the investment. So first of all, we really need to de-risk the financing. How do we do this? We will hear about this very, very, very soon. So we really need to make sure that we have access to affordable financing like other carbon-free energy sources, whether it is through normal capital investment, but also green financing, sustainable financing, all those taxonomy frameworks. We also need to make sure that we allocate the financial risk appropriately among all the different stakeholders in the projects. And of course, we are going to hear in a couple of minutes from the IEA new report on nuclear financing, the EFI Foundation upcoming report on making SMRs bankable, the Clean Air Task Force Global Nuclear Stocktake Assessment, and the Nuclear Threat Initiative work on nuclear safety, security, and non-proliferation. So all those things will help us. But very briefly, before I close, I will tell you there is 2 other dimensions that we cannot forget. Number 2, we also, in addition to the risk in the financing, we need to de-risk the revenue streams. So that is the risk in the price of electricity, the price of energy. How do we do this? We really need to reimagine the markets, the energy and electricity markets. We have markets today that do not match the energy systems of today. So we really need to make sure that the price of energy is commensurate to the value of energy with all the attributes that the different energy sources do provide, and we need to value them and price them. We need to put in place signals that incentivize investment in infrastructure, whether it's generation or transmission or distribution or everything in between. And also these signals need to incentivize long-term planning, of course. And then last but not least, which is the part where we, the nuclear industry, need to get our act together, is de-risking the project delivery. We really need to streamline the licensing and the regulation of these projects. And we, as an industry, need to ramp up our capabilities, particularly in Western economies. We need to have a stronger workforce. We need stronger supply chains. And with all that, we really need to accelerate and grow the learning curves that we have. In other words, we need to go from projects that happen every once in a while to programs that continue building the same set of things over and over and over again, making the most of the industrial infrastructure and the long-term strategies. So, this is the job of the nuclear industry. We are working on that, and we really are bringing the industry together to actually deliver on time and on budget. But let me just be clear, none of this will not happen if each sector works separately. This is a team effort. Governments, the finance community, industry, policymakers, regulators. We really need to put together, as I said before, this coalition of the ambitions. So frankly, let me just close by saying that it is now the time to move forward. We need to translate ambition into pragmatic industrial policies, good intentions into actual affordable financing for new nuclear, and deadlines into on-time, on-budget delivery of new nuclear projects. So I'll stop here, and I look very much forward to the rest of the session. Thank you.
So good evening. I'm very pleasure to come to this side event. Actually, this is the first events agency engaging in this COP29. And I would like to thank CAF, EFI, and NTI for working with us to co-organize this event. And this is not only the first one. Actually, we already been working together for quite a long, and including the last COP28, when you release your global playbook, we actually organize, we contribute to our events. And also, I remember that even in March, which mentioned by this Sama and colleagues about this first ever nuclear summit, which Dr. Moniz also contribute to this very important finance focus side, high-level panel during the summit. So a lot of cooperation in the past. I have to say, for agency, we have been engaging in the COP from the very beginning. But the change is from the 2019 when the DG Grossi assumed the office. And then we changed our strategy to do more substantial contribution, engagement, to make more advocacy voices in collective manner with our partners in the COP. That's why we are here to work with our partners from government, member state, industry, and also NGO. I have to say, although this, also like to thank our UN DESA to offer this opportunity for us to run this event. You know, today is the first day. It's also difficult to find a place. It's very, very competitive for having a place to do some very impactful events. Thank UN DESA for allowing us to use the SDG Pavilion. So many things has been talked by the previous two speakers, talking about what happened since the COP28. A great momentum has been created. Not only for the whole energy transition, but also for nuclear sector. So we see the momentum since then, and also we see the momentum has been boosted, in the nuclear energy summit. And a lot of things happened in the past year, and which is really a positive signal for nuclear. I just want to mention that we see when we see the growing momentum, we also see the growing interest in the SMR, which has been mentioned also by the previous speakers and also Lee about this growing interest in SMR. Agency actually tracked the interest of the SMR among our countries. We see the number from the 2020 to today, from 1 to more than 25 countries expressed their interest in the SMR. I'm now talking about the large reactors, as SMR only. So there's also interesting growth, among the member states. So we know why the SMR becomes so popular, because they have some very unique features, because this kind of better upfront capital cost affordabilities, and also the advanced engineering feature which can be built modular in the factory, modular construction process, and can improve the delivery of the project, and also ability to meet some kind of a flexible power generation for different users, and also this kind of the popular multiple application for cogeneration have been mentioned also by previous speakers, talking about this heat and the desalination and even hydrogen. Now it's so popular among all the people, the communities when you talk about transition, and a lot also some kind of a potential to support this remote region which has less infrastructure available for building the large power system. So agency also have some kind of a track on what happened in the world in terms of the technology readiness, SMRs. I think so. You can, if you followed what published in our agency website, you can see this so-called ARS, Advanced Reactor Information System, which capture the development of different technologies in the world. And this year we changed a little bit our approach, try not to capture as many as possible. We try to capture what is happening on the ground. So you see the number actually decreased from the previous 80 or 90 different designs. We only focus on main 68 designs, which actually happen with different stages of development, operation, and basic design, detailed design, and also the concept design. So you can see, you can go to the agency website, you can see that the information there. So among these 68, that include 14 land-based water-cooled reactors, 6 marine-based water-cooled reactor, and 10 liquid metal fast neutron reactor, and 14 gas-cooled reactor, and also 11 molten salt reactor, and 13 micro reactors. Among them, I have to say, 4 already in operation, and 4 under the construction, 32 at the different design stage, and 32 plus 28. So that reflects this kind of the real situation in the SMR world. So agency also published this famous RDS1 publication talking about projection up to 2050. You probably see in this publication released in September, which also gives some figure, also quite encouraging. It's a high case is about 2.5 times higher of today's capacity by 2050. And the low case is also 40% increase. So it's quite both encouraging growth. And when we look at that one, we also find some interesting reflect in this growth. That is among this estimate around 600. No, when we talk about this 2.5 times, we talk about 950 gigawatts. It's this kind of estimate by 2050. Upon what we receive and analyze the policy announced by the countries. Among them, 640 gigawatt of new nuclear capacity need to be deployed by 2050. About 24% could be made up of the SMRs. So you see the potential contribution of SMR to this global projection we analyze. So if you calculate by SMR, which is a lower, in average 300 megawatt below, so that means over 500 SMR need to be deployed by 2050. You see, there's also quite a significant. So the last month we have this the first SMR conference convened in Vienna. More than 1,000 participants around the world from member states, industry, and also other academic sector. Attend this conference and to talk about SMR from different perspectives. So actually this is really a good productive outcome from this global debate on the SMR. What is happened and what is the advantage and what is the challenge you need to overcome. So this is quite an encouraging development. We know this event focus on the finance, so I have to talk about this one. And there's also, some already mentioned about this publication to talk about this finance. Actually, in October, during the G20 and the Clean Energy Ministerial, we released this our also not annual, it's a regular publication called Climate Change and Nuclear Power. And this year's publication focused on finance specifically. So in this publication, we actually talk about some kind of the latest trend in financing nuclear project and whether the large reactor and the small SMR and both how they actually will play their role in the country who are interested in using the nuclear to support their energy transition. So we also highlight that is the importance of securing this kind of series built for SMR, because the SMR has a very unique nature. You have to do in the series in order to ensure the economics of the SMR. So that's why I think the publication from NTI and also on this one is also very, very relevant. So we all talk about this different part of SMR, which I already mentioned, this cogeneration and all these things, and and potential contribution of SMR to transition. But also we have to understand the main challenges of SMR is still there. For example, even the upfront lower cost, capital cost can be lower, but it's still quite intensive. If you calculate comparing with other energy sources. So we have to resolve this financing issue as well, but maybe with the different approaches. And also we have to address this regulatory process, which Sama already mentioned, and also try to identify what kind of a country condition really suitable for deploy the SMR. It's not all countries need to that SMR, because SMR has a kind of a special feature. So we analyze all different things, try to understand how SMR will be deployed based on the country specific. So I wanted to mention that in order to support the SMR development and deployment, agency has been working hard, try to facilitate this process. Probably you all noticed this very important initiative launched by our DG Growth, it's a NICE. So Nuclear Harmonization and Standardization Initiative. They try to focus on these two separate and also complementary tracks, regulatory body and framework, and also the industry process to help the country to facilitate the deployment of the SMR. So agency already completed the first phase of this effort. Some kind of progress has been made. And during this SMR conference, actually the first half of the day, there is a plenary of NICE. Try to release what has been achieved and what needs to be done in the next phase. So I hope you can have a chance to look at that one. I don't want to go to detail, but that's a lot of the information there in our agency SMR platform. That is a one-stop shop platform for member states, for our partners to look at all the information related to SMR. I hope you can go there to take a look. And also other things I want to mention this, in this COP, there are many events focusing on the finance. And especially I want to mention one, which will happen on the 13th November between 4 and 5 p.m. in the room 20. And the Zone D, which is within the VVIP area. So our DG Grossi and the COP 2029 presidency, and also the international head of the international organization like IEA, UNECE, ARENA, and also the financial institution like EBRD, the vice president, and also Sama, and the director general of the WNA, all will be there to talk about the finance for in the energy transition, including the finance for nuclear. So I hope you have time, and please come to us to go to attend that, because that place needs special tickets to access. So if you're all welcome to go to that very high level, and also probably only one high level parties event in the COP 29 focus on the nuclear topics. So I hope that one will be very delightful for everyone who are interested on this finance topic. Thank you very much.
So, wow, I'm just so blown away by all this progress and everything that's been happening over the past year on nuclear. But really also want to just thank the audience. There's standing room only, and you're filling it all. So thank you so much for coming to this event. So what I want to do now is introduce my esteemed panelists. and dive into a little bit more detail, particularly on scaling nuclear, scaling SMRs in the US and Europe. We've heard a lot of progress around the world and a lot of momentum that we need nuclear, a lot of new momentum in the US, a renaissance in Europe. But at Clean Air Task Force, we're really focused on getting steel in the ground. So let's talk about that. I have with me today, on my left, Ross Matskin-Bridger, who's the Senior Director for Nuclear Materials Security at the Nuclear Threat Initiative. And to my right, Stephen Camello, who's the Senior Vice President at the EFI Foundation. And so we'll talk for the next 20 minutes or so a little bit about these issues, as well as the issue of non-proliferation and nuclear security. But Steve, let's start with you. And we can share the microphone, but you really have to hold it close, yeah?
Like this.
The Nuclear Scaling Initiative, you launched this at the Nuclear Climate Week, really focusing on scaling nuclear in the US and Central and Eastern Europe. Tell us a little bit about what it is and how everyone here can get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lee, and thanks everyone for being here. Nuclear Scaling Initiative is a collaboration between the three organizations you see here, NTI, EFI Foundation, and CAATF. And it builds upon work that we did about a year ago at COP28. If everything there was a function of setting a target, we're really focused on the how. How do you essentially get to the 1 terawatt that we need to put in the ground between now and 2050? And let's just put that in perspective. 1 terawatt is about $5 trillion, and that's about $600 million a day, every day from now until 2050 of investment. So thinking about basically creating a tailwind behind essentially what Sama said, which is organizing and helping create the ecosystem, bringing the right people to the table to get order books instantiated, doing it in the right way, and having every country see themselves in this transition.
Thank you. And I really have a kind of important questions.
Yeah.
There's SMRs, large reactors. Do we need both, one or the other?
We need them all, absolutely. We need the large because we know how to build them, and we do know how to build them. Russia knows how to build them, China, South Korea, UAE, they all know how to build them on time and on budget. SMRs is something that's new, but we'll learn how to do that as well. And micro has a significant opportunity as well, depending on its application.
Okay, well, I want to turn to you, Ross. Non-proliferation. There's geopolitical fragmentation, conflict is increasing. Why is non-proliferation really important in the conversation right now?
Yeah, thanks, Lee, and I'm really excited to be here. I think sometimes your security...
Close.
Okay, I hope this is better. You hear security, non-proliferation, you think, oh, this is the downer part of the conversation, but it's not. There is a really great story to tell here, and you can have clean electricity from nuclear power that's helping bring people out of poverty, that is really a firm source on our grids, and do it in a way that is safe and secure. And I can say that with confidence because we're largely doing that today, right? But where this conversation of non-proliferation, security comes is there's a lot of new technologies that are out there now. And on one hand, that's really exciting, right? It's great to see the potential and the innovation that we have. On the other hand, we just need to be smart because we know that there are dual uses for nuclear technologies, for nuclear materials. We can do this the right way. We are doing it the right way right now. We just need to be careful that we continue to do it the right way into the future. And this impacts financing too, right? Because we want investments that have the least amount of risk, right? We want investments that don't get bogged down in security costs either. So we can absolutely deliver on that.
And Ross, as part of your work, you're actually looking into creating a buyer's guide because we've heard there's dozens, close to 100 technology designs out there, right? So tell us a little bit about why a buyer's guide? Why is that needed?
Yeah, so we are looking at it's a very busy marketplace out there right now, right? And a few months ago I would have told you 80 plus designs that we're looking at. We're actually now up to 150 plus designs that we're tracking. And again, this is great, but on the other hand, it's also maybe a little too busy for the task that we have set for ourselves, right? We've heard from folks today already that we need to get going quick, right? We have tripling nuclear pledge. Countries have their own pledges for what they want to do by 2030, 2035, 2040, 2050, right? So just the tripling pledge, that means we're talking about 50 gigawatts a year, every year, between 2030 and 2050. So when we say a buyer's guide, or really looking at trying to make a little more sense of the market, the busy marketplace that we have. And so how can we coalesce around a smaller number of designs that is going to help us get to our really urgent goals, while at the same time making sure that we're accounting for non-proliferation, security, that we're choosing designs that are going to be smart for everyone.
Yeah, and so thank you, Ross. I do want to turn to the conversation of financing. Thank you. I think as we have heard, right, financing is a key barrier. And actually my colleague, Malvina Kvist, she's sitting over there. Malvina, thank you. She wrote in the stock-taking blog that, Sama, you mentioned, that on average has taken 6 to 7 years for nuclear projects to reach financial close, compared to renewables just a few months, right? So, Steve, tell us a little bit more about this barrier and what can be done to overcome it. What's your theory of change?
Yeah, so we talk a lot about de-risking, and what does that actually mean? That means actually putting into the right balance risk and return. When we're thinking about SMRs, what's the price? How much do they cost? Who really knows? We don't necessarily have the data for that because we really haven't done that at scale. So really, this is what the market is reacting to, is they don't have a lot of operational heritage to point to that gives them the confidence that would otherwise lower the risk. So the theory of change here is, especially with a newer technology like SMRs, that's where the public backstop needs to step up. The idea here is to spend millions of dollars up front to make sure that the designs are solid and you have construction-ready documentation and tender-ready documentation. Once you have that, you have high confidence that you can actually build. Spend millions of dollars now to avoid spending billions in overrun on the back end. Now, if you're going to be building the first, second, third of a kind, again, you don't really have the construction experience. So maybe for those first 1, 2, or 3, as a complement to making sure that the construction documentation, the design is solid up front, that you basically cap that unbounded construction risk. In combination, that sandwich, the some money up front with a backstop on the end, that is what we think is the way to actually de-risk this technology, using some public funds surgically applied to unlock private capital.
And so when we're thinking, we're here at COP29, right? This is the finance COP. We have lots of nuclear events happening. There's actually the Atoms for Climate Pavilion this way, Net Zero Nuclear Pavilion that way. What are your hopes for this COP?
Just quickly, I will remind everyone that this is a $5 trillion market. It will move. So if there is hesitation in governments to get involved, the hesitation should really go away insofar as, do you want to capture a significant piece of that $5 trillion? It's there, and if you don't pick it up, someone else will, so that's some friendly competition. I would like to see governments move from pledges to pledges of gigawatts to pledges of money, and again, surgically applied, I think you can actually get to the de-risking and the scaling that you're looking for.
Ross, over to you.
Yeah, I think that nuclear stakeholders have done a fantastic job over the last 10 years or so at COP, in other venues, to really make nuclear part of the clean energy conversation. And that's been done by kind of banding together this idea that rising tides lift all boats. And I think that is fantastic. It's served nuclear stakeholders really well. At the same time, I think we're now at a stage, we need to keep doing that on one hand, but on the other hand, we need to start differentiating a little bit too, because if nuclear is going to be a big part of the solution, we have to get going now. And we really have to, as Lee said, start putting steel in the ground. How do we differentiate nuclear from other technologies, but also nuclear within nuclear. How do we really boil it down to the kinds of technologies that we can actually move forward with and put steel on the ground?
And when we talk about steel in the ground, Steve, we talk a lot about order books.
Yes.
I think it's your favorite term, isn't it?
One of the favorite terms, yes.
Okay, well, talk to us about, what is an order book and where do we want to see it?
This is the unlock in SMRs, where you're moving from economies of scale to economies of series. Now, economies of series means that you're building the same thing again and again and again. And if you're building the same thing again and again and again, you're going to get better at it, ostensibly. So an order book is building multiple instances, multiple steels in the ground of the same design. Again, look, one thing, here's an anecdote. KHNP, Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power, they've been building a nuclear power plant somewhere in the world since 1989. They've gotten really good at that. That's essentially the model that we want to replicate for SMRs, and we're going to be able to do that, moving more of that into a factory setting as well. So that's the flywheel that keeps turning, right? You can build more at speed and scale, but only if you start with building a same design multiple times to get that skill base.
Would you like to add anything? No. I do want to invite the audience, if you'd like to ask any questions. I think I have to ask you to come to the front so we can hear the question. Or, yes, so if anyone has a question, right there.
Yeah, thanks. This is a fascinating meeting. Just talking about the proliferation risk, which IAEA will be looking at, like governments that are in the game now will be looking at sort of rogue startups all of a sudden doing stuff. How are you going to de-risk it by, accident-tolerant fuels that would be really hard to put to malicious use, or are you just going to be really strict that only certain people can manufacture the fuel? Like, what's the game plan?
And David, can you just quickly introduce yourself, please?
Sorry, David Gillespie, member of the Australian House of Representatives, initiator and chair of the Australian Parliamentary Friends of Nuclear Industries. We're this funny country on the bottom of the world that has a ban in place, even though we have 30% of the world's known uranium. We've been in the IAEA since the 1950s. We've signed about every international treaty required except maybe 2 or 3. And we operated 3 nuclear reactors, produced 25% of the world's medical isotopes for the southern part of the globe. And we have the best initiative for the management of high-level waste, and that is Synrock, a new facility with a industrial-size facility in the middle of Sydney suburbia. But we can't operate electricity plants. So our group has been trying to get Australia to grow up, put their big boy pants on, and change the state and federal regulations so that we can join this nuclear. It's more than a renaissance. It sounds like it's a gold rush.
Well, yeah, thank you very much for the question. And so we don't want to be restrictive here in terms of who has access to nuclear energy, right? Developing countries, established nuclear countries, newcomer countries, right? There is potentially a role to play for many of these, right? And so what we're looking for on the non-proliferation side is really what are some more universal principles that everyone can follow, right? Embarking countries, but also established countries who can really be role models, right? So not just do as I say, not as I do, but really provide examples to follow. And so one of the kind of principles we'll be looking at is really avoiding the use of weapons usable material as fuel. So most reactors around the world today use low enriched uranium. Great for reactors. Doesn't have direct use for nuclear weapons. There are some designs out there, right, that are looking at plutonium fuels that might use more weapons usable material, and there's no nefarious intent there, but there are proliferation concerns. So one of the principles we'll be looking at is really trying to coalesce around fuels that are not weapons usable.
Thanks.
And yeah, it's on.
Well, thanks, Steve. Steve mentioned before doing units multiple times. Well, I'm another Dave from Australia, but unlike David Gillespie, who's Friends of Nuclear, I'm Dave Sweeney from the Australian Nuclear Free Alliance, which is an Indigenous worker and environmental network concerned about nuclear power and the proposals for nuclear power in Australia. And nuclear power in Australia, it's not a question of big boys' pants or any gender's clothing. It's a question of what fits, what works. And Australia may have 1/3 of the world's uranium, but we are also now exiting coal, the fuel that has built our country. We're exiting coal in 10 years, and it's the responsibility of government to manage that and to put the hope in SMRs, for many of us, is to put promises and rhetoric ahead of performance and reality. So my question is that I don't think it is helpful to say big boys' pants and turn it into that sort of thing and grow up. I think it is helpful when you're talking, and I'm interested, when you're talking de-risking about proliferation, and that's important, and about cost, which I think is miles behind the pace, because ultimately you're saying let's put it on public funding to begin with. And I'm also asking, what are your plans for de-risking in relation to social licence? Because the nuclear industry is under the pump in social licence. There's been a lot of money. You haven't convinced a lot of people. And in Australia, where 40% of our electricity is renewable, and where our chief scientific bodies have said that's the cheapest and quickest form of moving to a clean energy future, you're not convincing people. So how do you expect to go around that?
Yeah, David,
ahead,
I
thank you.
appreciate both Davids coming up here and giving two perspectives on nuclear in Australia. And I think you're bringing up really, really important points. And I think, you know, this will also differ where the solution fits well, will differ on the national circumstances and whether you can create a political economy around the solution. What we have seen, for example, in Europe is because of energy security, and Europe is the biggest energy importer in the world, as an example. I'm from Germany, for example, and pro-nuclear. And what we've seen is that there is a huge interest in energy security and nuclear as a means to achieve this, right? So I think this is a great space. I'm happy you're here. I'm happy we're here having this conversation together at COP. But I think you also had a specific question for Steve. So you want to jump in here?
Sure. So speaking about the cost, well, the way that I wonder if it is about cost, because I think Lee actually addressed the idea that it needs to fit, as she said, in the national context, right? Is this an industry that you want to build up? Does it make sense given your natural resources, given what you want to do in terms of economic development? Do you see it playing a role in energy security? I'm still of the belief that most technologies out there, in some form or another, have been backstopped by public funds at some point. We did that with solar, we did that with wind, we did that with fracking. So I'm still of the belief that if this is going to have a social good, and the subsidy or the support is not going to be forever, it's just enough to get the ball rolling. But without that, I think we're going to, it's going to scale slower than we would otherwise need it. And all we want is for it to be a viable option. And what we really want is to not have this conversation next year and the year after that and the year after that saying, oh, we really need to de-risk this. We want it de-risked, and then you can choose if it's something that would actually fit within your national context.
Great.
Hello, my name is Kyung Lee. I calculate the environmental impact in South Korea. And I really love the nuclear energy, and there's so many nuclear energy in South Korea. And I also believe that nuclear energy can be a very good source for achieving the net zero. But in this case, I have two questions. Why nuclear energy cannot be part of the green energy? I believe the biggest obstacle is the management of the nuclear waste, I believe. But the nuclear energy, the nuclear power plants has been implemented in years and years, but no one can assure that nuclear waste can be managed environmentally friendly. This is I think is the biggest obstacle. And what kind of actions should be made in order to fully make the nuclear energy environmentally friendly? This is my first question. The second question is, we all know that the AI, the nuclear energy can be one of the solution for the AI, but so the other renewable energies. The nuclear energy can be a good source for achieving the SDGs, but so do other renewable energies. And maybe the other renewable energies are more affordable compared to nuclear energy right now. So what kind of other differentiate strategies should the company needs to make in order to scaling up the nuclear energy? Thank you.
Great. So we had two questions. Number one, nuclear waste, which I think Ross is going to talk about, and then energy demand, soaring energy demand, not just from AI, but also cooling, energy access. There's 600 million people who don't have energy access today, as well as clean firm needs overall. So I think that is an important question. And from my perspective, I would say nuclear isn't the answer to everything. It's a part of the solution, but a significant part of the solution due to its scalability. But I think Steve will jump in after Ross tackles your first question. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, great question, because spent nuclear fuel, nuclear waste is certainly on many people's minds. And so I think there are some challenges here, but also kind of like a hidden positive story on the waste front. So we know that there's been lots of challenges finding permanent repositories for spent nuclear fuel, right? And getting community buy-in for why this is a good thing to move forward with. Now, in Finland, they're making a lot of progress. Sweden, France, Canada, are doing some really good work as well. But we know that this is a challenge, okay? But at the same time, there has been some really great interim solutions that have become the norm in many parts of the world, and that is storage in dry casks, right? And so we know that dry cask storage can, in some cases, go up to 100 years. They're very robust and, are great from a security perspective. So I think there's a lot of promise in being able to use kind of interim dry cask storage that can be used for quite a long period of time as we're working towards the solutions, the permanent solutions for repositories. I would caution here, is a lot of talk about different novel technologies that could be used to somehow minimize waste volume, minimize the need for repositories. We need to be really careful here because we need to get into the details of these discussions. Some of these technologies don't do exactly what they're claiming to do, and some of them present some really concerning proliferation risks as well. So we need to be careful, but there are some really strong solutions out there.
So just very quickly, great point. So as Lee mentioned, there's a lot of vectors when it comes to demand growth. But let's be clear, most likely the future is predominantly going to be renewable. Okay, but it may be very expensive if it was only renewable, simply because there could be instances where you're just unable to generate. You need some sort of clean, firm power to be able to act as a base load or a base platform or substrate to essentially make the grid run. Now, it could be predominantly at a global level. In some cases, given natural resources or natural endowments, it could be even more renewable. In other cases, renewables may not fit the bill. And so you want to have that option that is energy dense and is also enabling of a heavily electrified future that, let's be frank, may also include electrofuels, right? And those are energy intensive production processes that would otherwise may not be best suited for a renewable-only grid. One last thing is, when it comes down to cost, I caution the use of the levelized cost of electricity. That is basically the marginal cost to produce that electron. It doesn't get into the entire system that is able to deliver it and to ensure that that capacity is there. So if you really want to have an apples to apples comparison, nuclear needs to be looked at renewables plus a storage facility plus the control of all of those, and not just the one solar panel or one solar farm and one nuclear production facility.
Wonderful. And I know we're over time. There are more questions, which is really exciting. And honestly, I love coming to COP because we can finally have real honest conversations around the set of solutions with a diverse set of global stakeholders in our different spaces. And I'm just so grateful to the UN SDG Pavilion for having us here. I know you want to continue the conversation. Actually, there's going to be many nuclear events this week. And on Saturday, we're hosting a reception. The Nuclear Scaling Initiative is hosting a reception. If you want to join us, please approach Amy. There will be space for more discussion, but unfortunately we have to end the event here. So I just want to thank our esteemed keynote speakers for your contributions and your perspectives. Steve, Ross, thank you so much for this panel. And thank you so much for all of you
Thanks,
to coming
everyone.
here. This was awesome and super fun.